Welcome to the Carl B. Phillips Show, hosted by gospel music industry veteran, recording artist, songwriter, producer, radio announcer, and actor, Carl B. Phillips. Join Carl as he talks with gospel recording artists, producers, songwriters, pastors, and other creatives about music, ministry, and life. Get ready for another great conversation on the Carl B. Phillips Show.
This week's guest on the Carl B. Phillips Show, gospel recording artist and songwriter, David Frazier. Welcome to the Carl B. Phillips Show. I am Carl B. Phillips, Uncle Carl. Today's guest is a songwriter, recording artist, author, Stellar Award, Dove Award, and Grammy Award nominee. Outside of writing and recording his own music, he has written songs for Bishop Hezekiah Walker, Karen Clark Sheard, Yolanda Adams, and Ricky Dillard. Please help me welcome David Frazier.
Hey.
God bless you, sir. How are you?
Man, I'm blessed. Again, thank you for sharing your platform with me tonight. It's an honor.
It's my honor to be able to speak with you. As I stated, I'm going to ask a couple of random questions. First random question. What is a funny story from your childhood?
Funny story from my childhood would probably be I wanted to play the piano at my church as a youngster, and the deacons at the church, two deacons in particular, one named Deacon George Payne and one deacon named Willie Spivey, Deacon Willie Spivey. They didn't think that I could handle playing in the upstairs sanctuary of the church. So they said to me, well, if I would always come up and they would say, get off that piano, boy. You don't know what you're doing. Get off that piano, boy. So one day I asked, so if I can't play the piano here in the sanctuary, where could I play? Because I want to play. They said, well, there's a piano downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And on Thursday night, the missionaries have service, and you can play the piano for the missionary service. And that was how I started out playing the piano on a water damaged old piano where the keyboard went kind of warped and the keys were very sharp and they would cut into your fingers, and it was really a rough go for a while until one night they came into the service and saw me playing for the missionaries, and the head missionary, who was the pastor's sister at that time, said, we thank God for our musician. We got our own musician, David Frazier, and from that point they saw me playing down there, so they would let me come upstairs and play at the tender age of about 12 or 13. So
it's funny because I've been at my church for 50 years next year. And I've seen a lot of young musicians. They're just grateful to be able to play at any service. It's a missionary service, brotherhood, whatever service. They're just
I was
grateful.
The same way.
Yeah.
I was the same way.
Well, speaking of piano playing, who inspired you to start playing piano, and who inspired you to start writing songs?
Well, I was blessed growing up to be born and raised at a very musical church in Brooklyn, New York. Church was called Bible Way Church.
Ooh, Bible Way. Yes, sir.
In Brooklyn, it was 295 Gates Avenue when I was born. Then we moved over to 261 Rochester Avenue, corner Lincoln Place, and the minister of music was a guy, was a guy who was the pastor's son, Bishop Michael Rogers. And Bishop Michael Rogers recorded a couple of albums with our church choir on Savoy, the Bible Way Radio Choir.
Stay with God.
Stay with God was one of the albums. Get on Board was one of the albums. Take Him at His Word, and then the last one was called Praise His Name. But anyway, and we just recently did a tribute to Michael Rogers' music about maybe 4 or 5 months ago at his church in Virginia, and it was amazing. We brought a band in, revisited a lot of his old music. So when I was coming along, he was writing songs and playing the organ, and I wanted to play at my church. So I kind of started out playing the drums, and then I moved over to the bass a little bit. But I found out in the '70s, going into the early '80s, that most churches didn't have drum sets and bass amps, but everybody had a piano, everybody had an organ. And I had a piano in my house. So I kind of shifted over to take some. My mother sent me to get some piano lessons, which I didn't like because I still wanted to play the drums.
Mhm.
But took the lessons and I kind of just dug in. A friend of mine came to my house and played a song on my piano, and it kind of made me feel jealous. So I really buckled down, started practicing my piano playing. And there were a lot of great p- piano players at that time. The guy that played at Bible Way was a guy named Alan Cruz, who was a phenomenal pianist, played for a lot of contemporary groups as well as traditional groups. But in Brooklyn, there were a lot of great keyboard players around. You know, there was Timothy Wright, there was Michael Rogers, phenomenal pianist too. But you had people like Butch Haywood, Alfred White, Ronald Banks rather, Uriah Whitfield, who introduced me to hymns and stuff like this. There was a lot of guys around. I think I had our church was so musical back then that I really wanted to be Alan Cruz, just musically. So I could play everything Alan Cruz could play. If I heard him do something, I played it after him. And then eventually, Michael Rogers asked me to one Sunday morning, just asked me to come over to the organ. He said, "Put your left hand up here, put your right hand down here. I'll show you the pedals later." And that's how I started playing the organ, just kind of watching him do it, and just kind of matriculated that way.
So I'm apostolic also. So that's why when you say Bible way, I automatically know Bishop Huey Rogers, Pastor Michael Rogers. One of my favorite off of the album, Repent and Be Baptized. We all our choirs in Michigan, we were trying to sing that song.
That's funny. He would really feel good to hear that. We actually did repent in the tribute that we did for him. It was the last weekend of September that we did it, and it's actually on YouTube. It's called The Pen of Bishop Michael Rogers, and you can watch it. And we brought in a couple of guest leads and stuff like that. But yeah, it's called The Pen of Bishop Michael Rogers, and I did all of the Bible Way stuff, and then a friend of mine named James Rawson did the national choir music. But it's a very nice, about an hour long, hour 20 long, and you get to hear a revisit of some of Bishop Michael Rogers' music, who's a definitely inspirational to me from a keyboard player perspective, but then from a songwriting perspective, you mentioned Repent, you mentioned Stay with God, you mentioned, those albums. He wrote a lot of the songs on those albums, and I just asked the Lord one day if you could just let me write a song like Michael Rogers, I'll be satisfied. And he said to me that. He had some very kind words to say about my writing, and he's kind of said that a lot of things that he thought about in his mind and his heart, I was able to I was able to hear them and write them and actually have other people record them. So I thought that was very interesting, for him to say, and definitely was a blessing, to have that kind of looming musical figure of my life. There's some other people that I'm inspired by, but he was great. Alan Cruz was great, and then just for on a popular sense, people like Michael Brooks, uh, people like Percy Brady, Darius, but Marvin Winans. Uh, I'm a big James Taylor fan, Carly Simon, Burt Bacharach, Cowboy Sayer, Diane Warren, Babyface. I'm big into that, well, because those people wrote music that it seemed to impact the largest amount of people. And I wanted to write songs that weren't kind of trendy, but things that would last much longer than I could.
What was one of the first songs that you wrote and taught to a choir or taught to singers?
It's a song no one has ever probably heard before, but it was recorded on one of the Bible Way National Choir albums. It's a song called All Things Work Together for the Good. And the funny story behind that is that I showed Michael Rogers the song like a year before he actually recorded the song. So I showed him the song. He said, "Hey man, that sounds good. You should do some more work on it." And I was like, I thought this was the best thing next to sliced bread. So a year had passed, and I showed him the exact same song again. And he was like, "Oh, Dave, that's great. Let's record that." And I didn't do it. So yeah, it's called All Things Work Together for the Good. It's a guy named Keith Dobbins from Columbus, Ohio, who's leading it, who used to have a choir called the Resurrection
Resurrection Mass
Mass.
Choir.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
church,
so
here you have it.
So
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
so Keith is leading that song on the Bible Way National Choir album. So that was my very first
So let me think.
stab at
I'm trying to think of that album cover. Was it a yellow album cover?
of the National Choir.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it.
There was actually that album had some like light green and yellow in it, had a keyboard on it. I think that's the What's It All For album.
Okay.
But we did a What's It All For, we did a He's Keeping Me, and then we had that Pink Magnify. Bob,
Magnify.
yeah, Bob Way All the Way Live album. So yeah, I think we did three albums. The two albums you can find, but What's It All For is kind of hard to find.
I guess you could tell I'm a choir director too. That's why I
Good
know all
deal.
this music.
Yeah, yeah,
Plus,
good deal.
our church sang all the Bible Way songs, all those hit songs. We sang them.
Wow. You're
Yeah.
gonna get a kick out of the pen of Bishop Michael Wright. You're gonna get a kick out of it because it's really a great tribute to someone who I really felt, me and some others felt like he hadn't really, people just didn't know that he
Mm.
was that great of a writer.
You talked a little bit earlier about some of the people that influenced you. When you partner with Bishop Walker, as I
Mhm.
was doing my research, some of the musicians that are a part of that camp was kind of mind blowing to me. Talk about some of the musicians that you work with on some of Bishop Walker's projects and what it was like to be amongst uh, Melvin Crispell, uh, Jules, what is it, Jules Judah now? I didn't even know they were the same person.
Jules Bartholomew. Yeah, yeah.
Bartholomew.
Yeah, coming along in Brooklyn, the Bishop Walker started Love Fellowship, and he hadn't when he started Love Fellowship, he didn't really have any original music. He was kind of singing other people's music, and I was already writing music at Bible Way because Bishop Rogers had left. Bishop Michael Rogers had left to pastor in Virginia, and I became a young minister of music at Bible Way. So
Mm,
I was already writing the theme for the telecast, the TV broadcast, the theme for radio, the Easter play, the Christmas plays. I was writing stuff that the choir sang, just on a regular basis. So he called me up one day and was like, "Hey, we need some songs." So
mm,
going there initially, it was a great musician guy named Stanley Brown was there to help start Love Fellowship, and then a guy named Nate McNair, who played a lot of the synth lines on most of the Love Fellowship albums. And then I also play, so a lot of the music that I did for Bishop Walker, I kind of came in, I taught the music, taught the song, and then he just kind of just went with it. Um, a lot of people didn't know that, so if you heard a second chance or how much we can bear or I'll fly away or we made it or I need you to survive. I just came in and taught and they just played it and they just sang it. So um but yeah, Jules came in a little bit later. And these guys add like a real foundational element to to music approach to choir music.
mhm.
um, and Bishop Walker is a very stickler for foundations. He doesn't really like too much coloring, but he wants the foundations so that the choir can hear the parts against um, what the music is doing. So, and I left out Pastor Timothy Wright, who was in Brooklyn as well too. Great mentor of mine, great encourager, and I did some music on one of the New York Fellowship albums for Timothy Wright as well too. So, but yeah, big shout out to Bishop, the late Pastor Timothy Wright. David Wright is doing, his son is doing his father's work now. But yeah, I mean, Jules was there, and then we had a couple of little guest spots on different records, like Joe Wilson from Jersey, who did like some of the SOP, Natalie Wilson and SOP music. We had Jeff Davis, a great drummer out of Jersey. He came in and did some stuff along with Jeff Leslie was there. Reggie Parker on bass for on a lot of the records. And when Reggie didn't play, Reggie Parker didn't play, Reggie Young, who's another great bass player out of the city. So Brooklyn, really, I often call Brooklyn the mecca of gospel music because a lot of strong music that came out of Brooklyn and is still coming out of Brooklyn. You know, we had James Hall, Worship and Praise, which Melvin wasn't really doing that at that time. But once he started recording some stuff with Love Fellowship, that's when James started Worship and Praise, and Melvin kind of went over there because Bishop has already had a full stock of musicians. So it gave Melvin had the outlet of Love Fellowship, but he also had Worship and Praise as an outlet too for writing as well too. So Melvin, great friend of mine. We all know his son now, Melvin Crispell III, who is singing all over the world and doing what he's doing. But uh, yeah, so now even Brooklyn is evolving with Vincent Bohannon, who is kind of a James Hall mentee, kind of like a Butch Haywood mentee from Institutional there in Brooklyn. So a lot of the music that you hear, the style of the music is Brooklyn or Brooklyn bounce, what I like to call it, and it just moves and it's solid 3-part harmony, solid musical arrangement. So yeah, that's that. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
So you mentioned institutional,
Hmm.
kind of like the birth of the Brooklyn sound with J.C. White. Talk
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah. I mean, institutional was very influential in shaping the sound of gospel music. But like I said again, Brooklyn in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, you had so from a like a locale perspective, you had Washington Temple, which was Timothy Wright, and that was on the Crown Heights side of Brooklyn, and then you go downtown. That was institutional radio choir, uh, the gospel expositions, the devotions, and then you come back over to like Brownsville, well, East Brownsville, East New York area, and then you have Triborough Mass Choir. Then you go come further down Crown Heights, you at Bible Way, and then that in and of itself to have 4 or 5 major recording artists in the same city with choirs is pretty amazing. And then it kind of spilled over into Long Island a little bit, or Long Island kind of spilled over into Brooklyn with the Benny Cummins and the Donnie McClurkins and stuff like that. But Brooklyn was a lot of the musicians that played on a lot of records. They were all from Brooklyn. Jeffrey White, Bobby Walker, um, Derek Schofield, just different bass players. They're all different drummers. They're all from Brooklyn. Brooklyn was like a hub for when you wanted to hear some gospel music. You got on, if you was in the Bronx, you was in Manhattan, you was in Staten Island, you in Queens. You got on the train and you came to Brooklyn because we was going hard. We was going hard.
you mentioned Benny Cummins stopped by.
Yeah,
Is
Benny Cummins was you know that's Long Island. So anytime you start talking about Long Island gospel music, I mean, there's a lot of people that came out of that camp, that King's Temple camp. I know everybody knows the R&B artist Kelly Price. The Price sisters. They come out of that Long Island Church of God in Christ jurisdiction. The uh, there's another. so you had the McClurklands, you had the Price sisters, you had and there's another one I can't think of, but Timothy Wright had drafted another family group and moved and got them to sing with him in Brooklyn. So it was a lot of like family groups out in Long Island, but I guess the most notable would be Benny Cummins, the family, Benny Cummins singers, and the King's Temple Choir,
Okay.
King's Temple Church of God in Christ. Yeah, so
Yes,
and
sir.
Donnie McClurkin was in that group. Bishop Frank Anthon White was in that, coming out of that. Uh, Bishop Leroy Woodside. Cliff Hawkins. The um, Man, it's just so much great music came out of that Kojic jurisdiction that basically started under Bishop Washington, who was in Brooklyn with Timothy Wright as the state minister of music. But Benny Cummins was still rocking that Long Island. He brought a whole new different way of doing things, and it all enhanced what New York was doing from a choir perspective. So yeah, and all of this is choir stuff. Some of the groups came out, but most of this was choir music. So it definitely was influential on my side.
So how would you define, you called it the Brooklyn bounce, I think.
Yeah,
Bishop Walker calls it the New York groove. How do you define that?
it's basically an approach to the music. Sometimes people, from a tempo perspective, leave the tempo really open to be subjective to interpretation. Brooklyn, nah, whether it's slow or fast, it's always going to have this kind of four on the floor, but there'll also be other little colors and different things. But that four on the floor, that bounce, that even if you listen to his music, uh you know from back in the day to I'll Make It, um into stuff like How Much We Can Bear, into Never Gonna Let You Go. Even the slow stuff drove real hard. Even Second Chance had a nice little fall. It didn't break tempo and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just an approach to music, and it really changed a lot of the ways that people did choir singing around the world.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have that thing, that bounce thing that helps their music to turn around, beside modulating and those kinds of things. But yeah, they want that drive and kind of tempo that marries the lyrics that might be going against the tempo. So yeah, that Brooklyn bounce is still happening right now. I'm trying to still do it. I'm still trying to do it.
Recently, you celebrated a birthday earlier this month.
Yes, I did.
In this season of your life, what impact does celebrating another year of life mean to you?
Life is a blessing in and of itself. It's also, to me, a signal that there's still work to be done. There's still, God is not finished. So I'm grateful for opportunities to share, opportunities to do music, and I'm still getting a lot of opportunities to write and record and produce. So I'm grateful to God for that.
Sometimes, and this isn't a question, but just conversation. Sometimes, as we age, I remember hearing Fred Hammond, like right around the time he hit 50, he talked about if he was still relevant.
Hmm.
Do you ever, because you said you're still having opportunities, but do you ever sometimes wonder if what I'm doing is relevant with what's going on in the music world today?
Well, I think relevancy is kind of based on uh what you're saying,
Mhm.
because you may not be playing the style of what some of the new musicians or the younger musicians are playing, but I think great songs are great songs. Uh, to so in the last 2 or 3 years, I did some music with Ricky Dillard. So Release was nominated for a Grammy in 2021. Did another song, "Making Room," on his next project, the Breakthrough album, which his current record, I didn't do any music on, uh, but yeah, I mean, Bishop Walker is getting ready to record again. I have music on that. I'm still producing. I have personally new music out that is, the single is "Until the Whole World Sings," a new project that just dropped a couple of months ago. So yeah, I mean, I think relevance is based on content quality. I mean, if you
Mm.
got great content, you got something to say, people give you a chance to listen. Now you may not win a Grammy, but you may make it to some Sunday mornings, and I'm grateful to make it to Sunday mornings someplace.
So from what I'm hearing you saying, and I'm kind of here as I get older now. The Bible talks about in your present state there would be content. So if I'm hearing you right, it's almost like you're saying wherever God has you, enjoy that moment and be content in that place that God has you.
Yeah, I think I think sometimes we've got to understand we will become our lives become more rewarding when we do what we do for the right reasons. And I
Mhm.
think I've always tried to, my prayer has always been, God, open my ear so I can hear the sound and the song of heaven. Because if I can bring down what's in heaven on the earth, I have a bigger chance of it lasting longer and having a greater impact.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, Grammys are nice, but like I said, my goal is for people to I'm hoping that my music makes it to Sunday mornings in people's churches. Um, I was recently watching Kojic convention. Uh, Matter of fact, they sang it in November at the national meeting, but it made it over into the next meeting they just had a few weeks ago. A song I did called "If You Call on Jesus, He Will Answer Prayer." So it's like interesting, that's relevance. That to have done something that people want to keep going back to. And that's what I tried to make music that people want to keep going back to, keep revisiting.
You bring up an interesting point. The choir room and
Hmm.
Juan Hill recently recorded "How Much We Can Bear," and I love the arrangement of the groove. What did it feel like for you seeing? You kind of talked about it, but for you to see a new generation of singers recording one of your songs.
So this is probably the second uh real strong revisit. The first time that it happened was with Kanye West and the Sunday Service Choir. They did a song called "Stand on the Word," but the end of "Stand on the Word" is the vamp of "Power Belongs to God."
Right.
So yeah, to hear the choir room, Nashville, have youth or younger people from all cultures, and then you're introducing something that is 30 years old, give or take, and it still feels good. I mean, I I can't honestly say that, I go around the country and in churches, and they still want to go back to what that music feels like. I was at Pastor Donnie McClurkin's 60th birthday, and I posted some of the videos from that. And they didn't know what I was gonna do. So I said, well, let me get some singers, some musicians, and I'll introduce people to the Brooklyn Bounce for about 12 minutes, 10 minutes. And yeah, I mean, that music changed the way choirs sang on Sunday mornings, and what they sang and how they can be efficient. And I'm just grateful to have a little part of that. I can still go into churches and sing "How Much We Can Bear." I can still go in churches to do "Second Chance." I can still go in churches and do, of course, I can still do "I Need You to Survive." Stuff like that. So I mean, that's that. I don't even know if there's any. I mean, the Grammys and the Doves and the Stellas, all of that is great. But to have, and I'll also say this too, at Pastor Donnie's 60th, sitting on the front row is um uh um the Don Jackson and Teresa Hairston Jackson from the Stellar Awards and all that. So they sitting on the front row. Tremaine Hawkins is sitting next to them, and then Pastor Donnie. So I'm 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 doing these songs, and they are singing along like they, and I just think that is such an amazing blessing. And if there are any writers out here listening to this, if you can, like I said, the Stellas, the Doves, and the Grammys, all that's great. But it's great when you can go into a church and you start doing music and you see the response of people that were blessed by that music and still being blessed 25 years later, 30 years later. Listen, it doesn't get no better than that. Don't get no better than that.
All right, let's do another random question. What is one thing people would never guess about you?
Yeah. Um, Never guess. I don't know about never, but I'll say uh I um I love to cook.
Wow.
Um as a young musician, a good friend of mine was a drummer. He passed away now. His name is Jeff Davis. I mentioned him, and he played a lot of on a couple of the famous Richard Smallwood records like um, Anthem of Praise, and he also played on a lot of great records. I mean, I'd rather have Jesus, Dallas, Fort Worth. It's a lot of great records, but he was a drummer. He lived in Jersey City, and I used to go to Jersey City on New Year's night for this big musical that they would have, and after the musical, we would go eat. So we were almost like little. I was like a little young foodie at that time. And one day, one New Year's Eve, or I mean, yeah, New Year's Eve going into New Year's Day, we got out so late there was no place to eat, no place that we could go. So I ended up going to his house, and he proceeded to prepare this gourmet meal. And I was like, this is a drama. This is incredible, So I really, from that point, some 30 some years ago, I started to kind of get into cooking and health and, just eating different yeah, I mean, yeah, I fool around with a lot of different things, just not just the basic stuff. I fool around with a lot of different things. And I love it. I love to cook.
What's one of your favorite meals to cook?
I mean, I'm pretty much like I guess I could say I'm a I always I think a good meal should have a protein, a vegetable, and a starch.
Okay.
So there's nothing for me to have a great protein, some, a grilled mahi, or just something real nice, a baked chicken, or some type of fillet or something, and fresh mashed potatoes with rosemary, and then I come back with maybe sauteed Brussels sprouts or asparagus or something like that. Yeah, I like to fool around with it.
You talking bougie stuff. Most of us give me
But
some
I could
green
get down.
beans.
I could get. I don't really do too much fried food. So, but I mean, a baked chicken. I make an incredible 5 cheese macaroni and cheese. I'm a scratch guy, so everything is coming from scratch and organic, and yeah, that's me.
One of my early memories of you, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is the song "Get in the Move of God" from Young Artists for Christ, featuring Yolanda Adams. Talk about working with Bishop Michael Brooks and Young Artists for Christ.
Yes, I talked a little bit about at his homegoing about us connecting. I met Michael when Commission first came to New York on tour. Uh, I think he kind of came out before they. before they hit, and I was playing for somebody. He was like, "Man, come sit in with us, commission," because he was the only keyboard player, playing this rack of Sims, him, Mike Williams, and with Fred on the bass. And I don't even think Michael Wright was playing the guitar. It's just they was rocking a three-man. So so I played, and we kind of talked, became friends, and he said, "I'm getting ready to start this thing, Young Artists for Christ. I'd love for you to come." So I think the first 2 years I drove my car from Brooklyn to Detroit, and or rented a car or something like that. But I know I drove. And yeah, I thought it was a great idea. A lot of young people were involved, a lot of, John P. Key, Yolanda Adams, and yeah, I thought it was just a great, great time. So the first album, I think it was the first or the second recording, Mike had this deal with trying to think of the label right
Sound
now,
of
but
gospel.
Found the Gospel, and then he later on did a record with another company. I think it was the company that was recording some of the early Witness records. But I wrote "I Want to Be a Young Artist for Christ," the theme song that was made into one of the albums, and then "Getting the Move of God" was a song that I did, just kind of like, hey, I was in my writing bag, and yeah, that was just one of those opportunities where, you know Mike was like, "I need a song from you, I need a song from you, I need a song from you." So yeah. And
One thing I admired about Bishop Brooks was that he was so open to young writers.
mhm,
Even myself as a writer, one time he allowed me to come in and have one of my songs taught to
mhm,
young artists for Christ. So,
mhm,
he was just really a great man of God. Just
mhm,
really, but again, looking at young artists for Christ, it was such a dynamic group of young people.
mhm.
Do you think in this generation, uh, it could be recreated, what Bishop Brooks had? I'm kind of like what the choir room is doing. Do you see that there's possibilities with this generation of doing something like Young Artists for Christ?
I think there are always opportunities to do things as long as the focus remains, being a blessing to people. I think what ends up happening is the focus gets off into being social media successful, or being music industry successful, and that is a, you know fame is fleeting and popularity will pass. So you have to kind of, there are a lot of people that are trying to do these kinds of things. I believe in Detroit now, there's a couple of new kind of come together fellowship choir type things. But again, the focus has to be on making great music and being a blessing to people. And if you do that and you do it consistently, it'll go where it needs to go. It'll happen. It'll impact who it needs to impact.
In 1989, you founded God's Music. What is the purpose of your company?
Well, back in the day when I first started writing music, I didn't know that you needed to have a publishing company
Uh-oh.
as a writer. So you figure 1988, I think I had just recorded maybe one or two songs, and I didn't have a publishing company. And I was actually using Young Artists for Christ publishing on some of my early Hezekiah Walker music because I didn't have a publishing company. So I wanted to, get involved with that. So I got some money together, started a publishing company, and started to publish, not just write the music, but publish them under my God's Music. And yeah, I mean, you got to have that. A song is writer and publisher. That's, 50% writer, 50% publisher. So I wanted to have a publishing company entity that represented what was trying to do. So I started God's Music Incorporated. It's now God's Music LLC, and it's going to probably turn into God's Music Consulting Limited this year, probably. So yeah, I mean, it just gives you a way to not only make the music available to people, because all of the projects that I've done, even some projects that I wasn't the artist on, that I wrote music for other people, I published songbooks under the through my God's Music LLC. So I've got songbooks of a lot of the sheet music of the music that I've written. So that's how I'm able to be a blessing to people that don't play by ear. So, and they go all over the world, the songbooks.
Speaking of your music, you did a series of music, Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs, volume 1 through 5. Give us some synopsis of what that's about.
So writing music for artists is one thing. It's like, you know, doing a Hezekiah Walker song, doing a Ricky Dilla song, doing a Yolanda Adams song, doing a Karen Clark shit. That's one thing. That's a thing all in and of itself. But I had so much other music that I hadn't placed with other people, or just hadn't recorded it at all. Maybe nobody was singing it. So what I started to do was, there were songs that I was writing that I thought, "Whoa, this is good. I need to do something with it, and I don't want it to sit around." So I started doing these Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs records. The first one had a song on there, "Look and See the Wonder of God." His Presence is Here to Heal was on that very first one. His Presence is Here to Heal was recorded by Yolanda Adams, was recorded by Bishop T.D. Jakes, on the first Potter's House album. And then I just started doing these Psalms, hymns records, and then people would listen to them and take songs off of them and recut them. So the first one was like that, His Presence is Here to Heal, off of the volume 1. Volume 2 had a song on there called Show Yourself Mighty. And Show Yourself Mighty was recorded by Bishop Albert Jameson in the Gospel Music Workshop of America. And so the third one was Favor. I'm Walking in the Favor of God, which Favor was re-recorded by Pastor Shirley Caesar. And so that did pretty well. It's still played, my version of Favor is still played on satellite really, really often. And then the fourth one was called Destiny. And off the Destiny record, there's a song called God is Doing Something Wonderful in Me, which is kind of like a fellowship song, but it really got real, real popular, and people sing it all over the world. It's like crazy. Kids to adults. And it's a fellowship song. And now I'm up to number 5, which is Grace Songs. And that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And it's got some great, great pieces on there. The single is called Until the Whole World Sings. And so it's a record that I don't really sing a lot on, but went to Nashville, hired some singers, called some friends of mine, musicians, to send in their tracks, and put an album together. 9 songs. There's an anthem on this new record, which I've never done before. There's I don't have an instrumental on this record per se, but there's a couple of nice little pieces on there. You got Until the Whole World Sings. You got Psalm 139. You got there's a great little churchy song on there called "Finish with the Victory." When you listen to "Finish with the Victory," it bring back memories of you growing up in apostolic holiness. So I mean, but I got a lot of great guest musicians on here. John Paul McGee, who is the assistant piano director over at Berkeley. He's playing piano on my anthem. Uh,
Awesome
Cedric
musician.
Cedric Thompson is playing the very last song on the record that I did, Philippians 4:19. Of course, you can't do a gospel. I can't do a Psalm Sims record without having Jonathan DuBose Jr. on there on guitar. He's playing on Until the Whole World Sings. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just like a lot of stuff. Like, not a long record. It's not. It doesn't have like a lot of extended versions and stuff of songs and stuff. But it's just a couple of thoughts and ideas, and I wanted to give people that another volume of Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs. So we're on number 5. So that's great songs.
You've mentioned several times the latest single, Until the Whole World Sings. I love the song. What is the story behind the song?
So from a writing perspective, I live by this mantra. Um, Say what hasn't been said and sing what hasn't been sung.
Wow.
So in writing music, there are songs, some I always try to like do Google searches for songs that I write to make sure that there's not another one, so that it will live in a lane of its own. So there was Until the Whole World Sees and Until the Whole World Hears, but there wasn't an Until the Whole World Sings. So that's a plus right there. And then doing something that just kind of feels good. It doesn't necessarily promote a personality. It basically just talks about just sing hallelujah, sing God's praises. Keep singing until the whole world joins in with you. So and that's pretty much the concept.
What's next for David Frazier?
Oh man, it's a lot next. I'm producing an artist in Maryland. Her name is Kanita Washington on March 16th. A praise and worship project, but it's kind of African flavored. She's a worship leader at African church, so I kind of dove into writing music for that, and it's gonna be a very interesting project. So I'm doing that. Of course, I got. New Hezekiah Walker music coming this year. I'm hoping that they release. I have new Darwin Hobbs music coming. He's putting out a Sunday morning set list recording. So that's coming down the pike. Couple of a couple of new artists that I've been blessed to write for. They should be releasing this year. Bishop Brian Moore and Love Life Center Choir. Incredible church album. Incredible church album. Did some music on that. Let's see what else. Some new Ricky Dillard coming down the pike, and then probably by the end of the summer, I might get back into the studio and do Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs 6, which is probably going to be a holiday record. Well, I should say holiday, but it's going to be called The First Advent songs. Well, it'll be Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs 6, but it'll be songs of the First Advent and songs of Thanksgiving and resurrection.
Wow.
So it's going to have a couple of different things, stuff that I've done, never recorded, just some stuff I just did with other people, never recorded. There'll be some Christmas pieces on there. Um, a lot of people didn't know that I wrote. Bishop Walker sings a couple of Christmas songs that I wrote. More Than a Holiday. I might revisit that in a little bit bigger way. Um, the Christ of Christmas is another song I wrote for Bishop Hez. He actually sang it on BET one holiday. He still sings the song now. So yeah, I mean, it'll be stuff like that, and then some other Christmas pieces that I did. I wrote a Christmas cantata about 2-3 years ago, so I'm gonna take a couple of songs off of that, and then I'm going to do music for Thanksgiving season and then music of resurrection. So it'll give choirs and churches some more blueprints, for in different ideas and thoughts that I'm having. It'll probably be a 9-10 song record though.
How can people reach you? How can they get your music? And how can they follow you on social media?
I'm real easy to find. It's only one David Frazier on Facebook. My son is on Facebook too, but he's got David Frazier Jr. But David Frazier or David Frazier the second on Facebook. David Frazier Music on Facebook. You can go to that site. I'm on IG, David Frazier One, and I'm on X at Dave's Lyric. Um, my music is pretty much anywhere and everywhere. Apple Music, you just put David Frazier in. On Amazon Music, someone just sent me a link today. Amazon Music has a nice David Frazier package of music. Spotify, David Frazier. Now I've got a couple of playlists of my music on those digital sites as well. So I'm pretty easy to find. My email is daveslyric@me.com. So I'm out here, and yeah, so I'm easy to find.
As we wrap up, we've covered a whole lot tonight. But I want you to speak to a young songwriter about the path that they can follow. You've kind of talked a little bit about it earlier about, writing songs that people can sing, but a lot of times, or speak to a songwriter not to follow the trend, but to follow their heart.
Well, I'm blessed, Carl, to travel and do a lot of workshops, like at churches and when with choirs and church choirs, church praise teams, and I have a lot of musicians always ask me about uh, uh, songwriting, and I'm going to give you what I give to most songwriters. I think every great song needs to have four S's. They need to be singable, they need to be spiritual, they need to be simplistic, and they need to create synergy. So if you're writing music, you're especially gospel music, it needs to be spiritual. Secondly, it needs to be singable, because if your music is just all random thoughts and random ideas, you'll lose the average singer. And it needs to be simple. It needs to be simplistic. Timothy Wright told me if I wrote music for Sunday morning, he told me this 30 years ago. He said if I wrote music for Sunday morning is the only thing that happens to Christians once a week for the rest of their lives. So if I wrote music for Sunday morning, he said I would always have a platform. I would always have a place to do my music. And that synergy piece, synergy just means connection. Your music should cause people to connect. To come together, just or to sing together, So having those pieces in place, those four S's is a key. And one of the other things I try to tell songwriters is, again, my mantra: sing what has never been sung, and say what has never been said. If you can find things to say that have not been said yet, if you can find things to sing that have not been sung yet, you are on the road to being a successful writer. And it doesn't hurt, number three, to find a mentor. Find somebody that you can play ideas off of. You can bounce ideas off of, because a lot of times some of us become our greatest fans and our only fan. And so if we are our only fan and we're our greatest supporter, we don't have anything else to compare, or to not necessarily compare, but to bounce off, to get ideas and to work through formatting. I was blessed as a youngster to write songs, and I had a church choir to practice on. And everybody don't have a place to practice. So if you don't have a place to practice, you got to find somebody and practice on them. And they got to tell you, hey, I like this, I don't like this. I had a bishop that would say, I don't know about that one. Oh, okay, I'll keep this one. So you gotta have somebody in your life that can say, I like this, I don't like this, because you're not making music for yourself. You're making music for the world. And so you got to get somebody from the world to tell you, if you're doing something.
And I have enjoyed this conversation with you, going down memory lane. When you talk Bible way, you write down my lane.
That's my upbringing. And like I said again, you want to write this down. The Pen of Bishop Michael Rogers is on YouTube, and it's a fun little listen. It's not mixed or anything, but it's a good service, and it's a good tribute to one of the greats.
Listen, man, I really enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate you, man, just having this time to share your story. It's just been a pleasure. I always like to close by saying this: remember to work like you don't need the money, love like you never been hurt, and dance like no one's watching you, and sing until the whole world sings. God bless you, everybody.
I owe you $5 for that plug. Thank you, man.
The Carl B. Phillips Show is produced by Carl B. Phillips for Prove Me Productions. For more information about Carl B. Phillips, visit carlbphillips.com. Subscribe to The Carl B. Phillips Show on YouTube or your favorite podcast outlet.